Hello and a very good evening to you. I certainly hope you had a productive day. I'm Nancy Kachingira and it's time for your latest news update here on KTN Prime. Let's start with what's in the headlines. President Uhuru Kenyatta's ICC case is referred back to the trial chamber.
The counties actually have failed. That is a fact.
We want to officially close the
yes! And the nurses' strike takes its toll.
We would like to see Kenya take a more competitive positioning. And my argument is, if we cannot be competitive regionally, how can we aspire to be competitive internationally?
Plus, the checkered journey of Kenya's sugar sector. And the mystery of the death of prominent lawyer who initiated the removal of former anti-corruption chiefs. Once again, thank you for watching KTN Prime. William Silla is our sign language interpreter. Now, it's a blow for Deputy President William Ruto as ICC judges allow prosecutor Fatou Bensouda to use evidence of statements recorded by missing witnesses. This comes as the ICC Appeals Chamber avoided issuing a conclusive decision on whether to revive President Uhuru Kenyatta's case. Aaron Acheng begins our bulletin with that story.
The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'Audience La Cour Penale International, 8 word.
The International Criminal Court's appeal chamber has reversed the trial chamber's decision not to refer Kenya to the Assembly of State Parties for non-cooperation in the case against President Uhuru Kenyatta. ICC President Silvia Di Gumendi, who read a summary of the judgment in an open court, also said the trial chamber erred in linking the criminal case against Uhuru and the conduct of the prosecution staff.
The appeals chamber considers that if the trial chamber was uncertain about the importance of the potential evidence, it is unclear why it concluded that the lack of the requested evidence prevented it from exercising its functions.
The appeals chamber has now sent ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda's application back to the trial chamber for a new determination after finding that there were factual errors on how it came to its decision in the first place. The chamber will decide if it has discretion to make a finding for non-compliance and to refer the matter to the Assembly of State Parties, even where it had been determined that a state has failed to comply with the request for cooperation.
The possibility of obtaining the necessary evidence, even if the revised request was to be fully executed, is still nothing more than speculative.
Bensouda has blamed the Kenyan government's non-cooperation for collapse of her case against President Uhuru Kenyatta.
The appeal chamber considers that future cooperation by a requested state is a relevant factor to be taken into account when deciding on the appropriateness of a referral. However, in the present situation, the appeals chamber is of the view that it is for the trial chamber and not another chamber to decide on the matter.
In her application dated November 2013, Bensouda asked Trial Chamber 5 to allow her to refer Kenya to the Assembly of State Parties over a failure to cooperate as required under the Rome Statute.
I am here today because, as the chamber...
She argued that the government of Kenya had refused to submit to her office important documents which she required to solidify her case against Uhuru. During two status conferences held to fast-track the progress of her office in preparing for the trial against Uhuru Kenyatta, Bensouda accused Kenya of withholding his records, land ownership records, vehicle within his possession, and among others, companies in which he is a shareholder. In representing the government of Kenya, Attorney General Githu Muigai had argued that Bensouda needed to file an application in the Kenyan High Court in order to access some of the private documents she had sought on President Kenyatta. Aaron Ocheng, KTN News.
Well, with those latest developments, let's speak to the victim's lawyer in the Uhuru Kenyatta case, and that's Fergal Gaynor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Fergal. What's your reaction to these latest developments?
Well, I think victims will be relieved. The appeal succeeded, then that this issue is now back to the trial. It's very important that we hear from the government of Kenya whether they are now serious about cooperating or whether this is simply another chapter in what has been a long story of obstruction of justice by the Kenyan government.
So do you feel that there could be a chance that we might see some very different things happening after this?
It's very hard to tell at the moment, but certainly it's clear from what the appeals chamber said today that Kenya's duty to cooperate remains. It remains under a duty to hand over the financial evidence, to hand over the mobile telephone evidence that was at the heart of the litigation before the trial chamber. That duty hasn't gone away. We know that under the Constitution of Kenya, the person who is required to ensure that Kenya fulfills its international obligations is the President of Kenya, and that hasn't changed either. So President Kenyatta remains under a duty under the Constitution to ensure that Kenya fulfills its obligations, and that includes handing over the mobile telephone evidence, the banking data, and other information which has been withheld from the court for several years now.
And if that response from the Kenyan government is not necessarily as cooperative as you might hope, do you think there is a chance that Kenya might be referred to the Assembly of State Parties?
It's going to be interesting to see how the trial chamber handles that. It will no doubt hear submissions from the prosecution, from the government of Kenya, from the victims, I would expect, as to what is the best means of securing Kenya's cooperation. What the appeals chamber made clear today was that the most important thing is to ensure Kenya's cooperation. How that is achieved is up to the trial chamber to decide. But one thing that is not an option is for Kenya to continue not to cooperate and for there to be no consequences. There must be consequences for Kenya's continued non-cooperation in this investigation.
All right. Well, one of the things the appeals chamber did note is that there were factual errors in how the trial chamber handled Bensouda's application. But also there's a different application that you made regarding how the prosecution handled this case. How does this affect that?
This is tied into it because one of the allegations that we've been making is that the prosecutor didn't try hard enough to secure Kenya's cooperation by using Article 87.7. So the prosecution has now had its first Article 87.7 application sent back to the trial chamber. That should not prevent the prosecution in any way from continuing to bring as many Article 87.7 applications as are necessary to make sure that the trial chamber and everyone else understands the full extent of the non-cooperation by the government in this case. And it's a campaign of non-cooperation which has taken place, of course, alongside an international campaign by the government to discredit the ICC, to vilify the ICC. That campaign has gone on, as you know, before the African Union, before the UN Security Council, and before the Assembly of States Parties. So we will head back to the trial chamber. It will no doubt hear from all interested parties and participants, and then it will make a decision in due course when it's heard from everyone.
All right. Thank you very much for making time to speak to us tonight, Fergal. That was Fergal Gaynor. He is the victim's lawyer in the Uhuru Kenyatta case at the ICC. Now, as we move on, 2 people have been reported dead as the health workers' strike hits the 3rd day in Nandi County. Hundreds of hospitals across the county remain closed as health workers continue to agitate for better rewards. Nurses want a National Health Service Commission formed to manage their human resource function. However, things are looking up in Uasin Gishu County as health workers have reached an understanding with the county government.
Doors under lock and key, beds remain empty and some of the machines even put under wraps. This is the face of over 280 hospitals and dispensaries in Nandi County which are closed following the ongoing nurses' strike in various parts of the country. What the nurses want is an overhaul of the whole management system of health workers. Devolution of this function, nurses say, is not working.
The counties actually have failed. That is a fact, that they have failed to manage the health sector. And the only remedy is actually to form, or rather the formation of the National Health Service Commission to take care of human resource. Once the human resource has been taken care of, that is in terms of salaries, remuneration, in terms of transfers, promotions, education, discipline, and all other aspects that pertains to the human resource. Let them manage the infrastructure, let them build hospitals, let them build dispensaries.
We want to officially close the...
Yes! More than 800 health workers in Nandi County are on strike. They say that up to now they have not received their July dues and remittance on statutory reductions. The go-slow has seen lives lost and many left with no health care as private services are costly.
Watu hawezi kuachiliwa ukube sababu ya nini? Negotiation ambao serikali ya county na serikali ya national acha fanya nini? Acha wasungumuza, acha elewana. Kwa hivyo tukiwa Nandi hapa, nikisema mimi mnachua kuhusika na shida ile watu iko, hata leo watu wameanza kukuba ile iko kwa watu sababu hakuna assessment yote ambao wanapata kutoka kwa daktari.
But as the Nandi nurses remain unrelenting on their strike, their Uasin Gishu counterparts reached an agreement with the county government. The county has promised them that 3 months from now, it shall be effecting promotions.
We have agreed on all of the issues, and we want to give the county government the benefit of doubt to ensure that they implement all the agreement as per our resolutions of yesterday. And our members are now under firm instructions to continue offering services from now henceforth unless something else crops up.
The National Union of Nurses has called on the National Assembly's Health Committee to push for the formation of a National Health Service Commission. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News.
The chaos in the sugar subsector in Kenya has been ongoing for years. It started even long before the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, COMESA, initiated import quotas to protect Kenyan sugar from cheap imports. More than 10 years since the COMESA safeguards were first introduced, the sugar industry is still struggling and the future looks bleak. Ben Kitili traces the journey of the sugar industry in Kenya over the years. Just how did the country get here?
In an economy where cash crops have been on the decline over the years, sugarcane remains an important crop with more than 5 million Kenyans directly benefiting from cane farming. The first sugar factory was set up at Miwani in Kisumu in 1922, but government embarked on expanding sugar production later on, setting up Muhoroni, Chemelil, Mumias, Nzoia and South Nyanza sugar companies in the 1960s and 70s. In the mid-1980s, the government began liberalizing trade. This exposed local sugar producers to competition, with more competitively produced sugar imports from the region finding their way into the market.
These trade integration arrangements opened Kenya up to trade in a market of up to 600 million people.
A sugar development fund was established in 1992 as a revolving fund to finance the sugar industry. The kitty is financed through a levy. By 2005, the sugar subsector required a 50 billion shilling bailout package from the government. This included 20 billion to clear debts and another 20 billion to invest in cogeneration and diversification. In 2002, there was some progress as sugar production increased from 494,000 metric tons to 512 metric tons, with prices paid to farmers rising from 2,000 shillings to 3,500 shillings per ton. But a review of the Kenya Sugar Board strategic plan of 2004 to 2009 showed that yield levels had gone down those 5 years from 73 tons per hectare to 70 tons per hectare. Kenya produces 60 tons per hectare today. COMESA had come to Kenya's rescue in 2002, introducing import safeguards to insulate the Kenyan sugar industry from cheap sugar coming from neighboring countries.
We would like to see Kenya take a more competitive positioning. And my argument is, if we cannot be competitive regionally, how can we aspire to be competitive internationally? We are trying to position ourselves as a competitive country internationally.
At the time, COMESA gave the Kenya a set of conditions for providing the safeguards. So far, the country has made only a handful of them. The cost of sugar production remains extremely high, and farmers are still paid on tonnage rather than the quality of their sugarcane. In the most vital condition, the privatization of state-owned millers is yet to be met.
If you look at the sugar industry in Uganda, the main industries are in private hands. Kakira belongs to Madvani, Kinyara belongs to the Rai Group, and Lugazi, the Metas, and other such factories. And there's a reason why, I mean, it has definitely been proven that sugar industry in private hands does better than in public hands.
In June this year, the government released 1 billion shillings in efforts to bail out the troubled Mumias Sugar Company. The company's management, which processes 60% of Kenya's sugarcane, serving around 100,000 farmers, expects the company to suffer losses of at least 3.4 billion shillings, 25% higher than the 2.7 billion posted in 2014.
Import safeguards from COMESA have done little to improve the sugar subsector in Kenya. Cost of production remains super high. Farmers and millers still suffer at the hands of middlemen and sugar barons. And the average productivity per hectare is almost half that in countries like Malawi and Zambia. The sugar industry in Kenya is still waiting for real solutions, devoid of the politics. Ben Kitili, KTN News.
The politics of sugar. Well, from that, investigations have been launched to establish the real cause of death of prominent Kenyan lawyer Geoffrey Oriaro, who is said to have drowned at a swimming pool in Mombasa. Oriaro successfully petitioned for the removal of former EACC commissioners through Parliament. KTN's Francis Ontoma reports.
Grief engulfed Pandya Memorial Hospital as friends and relatives converged to establish contents of the autopsy report, and it was confusion and more confusion as reality sank home that the lawyer was no more.
We have just had a meeting with the pathologist, and he gave us a preliminary report, and one of the things that he told us, the immediate cause of death was drowning, and they are still doing some further analysis.
The late Oriaro is said to have died at around 7 p.m. while on a swimming expedition, and although initial post-mortem tests indicate that he could have drowned, his family insists that the lawyer was a good swimmer.
He was a very good swimmer. I was with him yesterday.
So we'll give you a detailed report afterwards.
This narrow and dusty road leads us to Bamburi's Charlotte Hotel, where the deceased is said to have met his death. An atmosphere of tension is clear, even as the caretaker of the facility takes us to the exact location where the death is said to have occurred. At around 4 p.m, Hussein will hear distress calls emanating from this pool, and when he rushed here, he will find the late Oriaro making frantic efforts to get out of the deep end of the pool. He called his friends, and immediately they got him out and tried to get him to vomit.
Kwenda hivi na kurudi kuangalia mtu hapa, lakini sasa nilikuja hapa wakati nikamwona jamaa tariko you sick. Tukaja tukaita watu wafanyakazi wangu wenzangu hapa ambao wanafanya hapa wote, wakaja tukamtoa, tukamlalisha hapa, tukamtapisha, tukafinya security, wakaja wakambeba wakampeleka hosi, lakini alikuwa kwaja dead hapa.
Moments later, he was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead. The hotel's operators say Oriaro was a regular visitor, and this time round he had come on the 9th of August with his wife, sister and children. At the time of the tragedy, however, he was all alone.
Who are you kuogelea? Ya kuogelea.
Wale watu wanaenda kuswim, kama pengine wakuwe na wale wanawaguide, wasaidie wale wajui kuswim, because a grown-up person like him dying because of a swimming pool, the things to be inquired.
The lawyer is said to have attended the recently concluded National LSK annual conference held at Diani's Leisure Hotel in Kwale. Described as an astute and dedicated lawyer, investigators will be banking heavily on initial autopsy reports here at the Pandya Memorial Hospital in trying to piece up exactly what may have killed the prominent lawyer. Francis Ontomwa, KTN News, Mombasa.
Let's talk weather now. So the weather forecast warns of an impending El Nino in less than a month. And Nairobians are particularly warned to prepare for 3 months of the floods. Well, we have seen the chaos caused by heavy rains in the city, and this latest warning revives the memories of the untold suffering and even death sometimes that happens. Forewarned is forearmed, we're told, but is it really?
The memories of the loss and deaths caused by the infamous Narok and Nairobi floods are still fresh in the minds of many Kenyans. Hezron Oyaro is one of the Kenyans who understand too well the effects of floods. This photo reminds him of the 11th day of May this year, when his wife Winfrida Kemunto was among the 9 Kenyans who lost their lives when a wall collapsed and covered them at Fuatanyayo Informal Estate in South Bay, Nairobi. Reason, they are living on a river course.
Kampata katikati kabla hajafika kwa nyumba. Sasa niko na huzuni kubwa. Lakini najipa moyo tu.
While that still lingers in Hezron's mind, on Monday, Nairobi County gave a warning of El Nino rainfall expected end time mid-August.
Predictions are that this will reach the strongest levels that we've never seen for the last 4 decades. That means that will be a serious event.
News that the National Disaster Management Unit claims not to have an official communication about.
Sasa habari rasmi ya kuhusiana na El Nino hatujapokea. Ni jukumu ya Kenya Meteorological Department wajitokezee na wataambia Wakenya ukweli ya kwamba kama kuna kitu kama hicho kitatokezea.
While the stakeholders are at loggerheads over the possibility of the rains, the wall that killed 9 Kenyans has been reconstructed. Businesses back to normal, perhaps another disaster in waiting. There are worries a worse accident might occur here in case the El Nino rains that are expected to be heavier than that experienced in 1997 comes to pass.
Hatuna pahali pa kwenda. Sasa sisi tunakaa tu tukingojea tuone itakuwa namna gani.
Hapa ndio tunalelea watoto, tutahama tuende wapi? Tujaonyeshwa mahali ya kwenda. Tukionyeshwa sisi tutaenda, hatukatai.
Residents are blaming the county government for giving orders for them to be relocated without a proper plan, a script that could replicate in many low-altitude areas across the country. Hezron, who is now single-handedly taking care of his 2 children, one aged 5 and the other 3, fears more for the timing of the expected El Nino, considering he leaves his house at 5 a.m. every day to go work in a certain bakery within the city.
Sijui mvua itakuwa upande wakati nitakuwa kazini ama nitakuwa nimerudi kwa nyumba hapa. Sasa ile kitu naofia upande mkubwa sana ni watoto wangu.
The county government of Nairobi has been blamed for allegedly letting the who is who in the county to grab many river pathways and build mansions at the expense of the city plan. The discord in information between the county government of Nairobi, the meteorological department, the disaster management unit creates a gap and many questions as to how we are prepared in dealing with such like calamities in case they reoccur. Lofty Matambo, KTN News, Nairobi.
Well, let's hope that when the rains do come, we will be better prepared. Now, let's remind you of a story that we began the bulletin with this evening. The appeals chamber at the ICC has avoided making a conclusive decision on whether to refer Kenya to the Assembly of State Parties, but they've taken this back to the trial chamber. And we're asking you this evening, on our big queue, should Uhuru's case at the ICC be revived? Should President Uhuru Kenyatta's case at the ICC be revived is our big Q this evening. The hashtag we're using is Uhuru Case. If you want to tweet us, go ahead and do that at KTN News KE and at Kachungira. That's my handle. You can also send an SMS to 22155. We'll take a look at some of your feedback later on. Now, a new therapy treatment for drug users, a discussion on what it takes to get drug addicts off narcotics is coming up after the break. A very important conversation. Stick around for that. Welcome back to KTN Prime. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, here's a scary fact. There are more than 18,000 people in Kenya addicted to heroin and other opiates. And now, a new way to deal with that. Tonight, we're speaking to Dr. Martin Sirengo. He is the head of NASCOP, which is the National AIDS and STI Control Program. Thank you for coming. And we're also speaking with Zulfikar Ali Khan, who is a beneficiary of this medically assisted therapy that we're going to be talking about tonight. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening.
Let's start with you, Dr. Martin Sirengo. What is medically assisted therapy?
Thank you, Nancy. Medically assisted therapy is a drug that is being administered to illicit drug users so that they can stop taking those drugs and reform back to normal life.
So this is a drug
Yes.
that helps people deal with a drug problem?
Yes.
How does that work?
Methadone is the drug that we're talking about here.
Mhm.
It's the drug that we launched today by the Cabinet Secretary. It's a drug that is listed as an essential drug by the World Health Organization for dealing with side effects of withdrawal when somebody stops taking the illicit drugs like heroin or cocaine.
Okay.
So what the drug does is to help alleviate the symptoms of withdrawal when somebody stops taking the illicit drugs,
Okay.
and therefore go back to normality.
All right.
So what we are doing right now is really to change lives. Many families have been broken. The socioeconomic impact of people taking drugs cannot be overemphasized.
Yes, let's just talk about that for a second. How serious is this problem in Kenya? I mean, we have the numbers, about 18,000 people addicted to heroin, but on a scale of how it is impacting the society, what's that looking like?
The problem is actually on the rise as we speak. The 18,000 plus people that we are talking about are just the people who inject drugs.
Right.
We have many more who smoke, for instance. There are many more who abuse other substances, alcohol included. You just saw the story of adolescents the other day. And it is more concerning for the people who inject drugs because by injecting, you're at risk of one, being infected with HIV from an infected person that you are sharing the needle with, or acquisition of viral hepatitis or other bloodborne diseases, and even sexually transmitted infections. So it's that bad.
Okay, so let's talk about the efficacy of this treatment, and for that I think we have a real live example here in the studio with us. Zulfikar, what's your experience with this?
Well, I have been an addict for the last 29 years.
For 29 years? You've been an addict for 29 years?
9 years, yes. Well, my experience has been a very tough experience. Yes, it has brought me down. It really brought me down. Yeah, it made me manipulate people, steal, broken relationships. It made me lose a lot of things. And to me, it was, when I became addicted to heroin, for me, everything was heroin. My God, my mother, my father, man. I didn't have time for anyone except heroin. Yeah.
And so, two things. One, what led you there? How did you end up in that situation?
It was through peer pressure, friends, bad company. Yeah. And usually because I started smoking, then marijuana, then alcohol, then I graduated to heroin. When I got addicted to heroin, I didn't even notice when I was addicted to heroin because it was through friends.
You didn't see it happening?
I didn't see it happen because I was given through cigarettes. You smoked. I didn't notice that.
So how is it that you were given it through cigarettes? Is it through friends? Or?
Yeah, through friends. Yeah, friends. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about your experience now with medically assisted therapy. Had you tried other things before that?
Before that, I've been to rehabilitation centers for more than 9 times. I've been to rehabilitation centers, but it didn't work because I usually put on painkillers, sleeping pills. They don't work because they usually also have side effects. Usually when they were withdrawn from my body, I had side effects, and I usually go back to heroin. Another thing, I usually to stop heroin, go back to alcohol, but which would usually lead me back to heroin. So now medical assisted therapy has done, the main problem in heroin addiction is the withdrawals, which are very severe, because when you don't have the heroin, you tend to yawn, you tend to vomit, you tend to diarrhea, stomach cramps, sweating, body pains, you can hardly even walk. You don't sleep. You become restless, irritable, you become really terrible. That is the problem medical assisted therapy takes care of. That is the only thing. It has been 9 months since I've been on medical assisted therapy.
And this has worked for you?
Well, it has worked. If it can work for an addict like me who has been addicted for 29 years, it can work for anyone. I would say that.
Okay, well, this is sounding like a miracle drug.
Yes.
Dr. Martin Sirango, I'm just going to end with you on this note. first of all, how do you prevent a relapse? Because this is another drug. And then, lastly, how do people access this service?
Thank you. Let me start with the issue of access. At the moment, we have the facility open at Madari National and Referral Hospital in Muthaiga. Currently, we have about 375 patients already on treatment.
Okay.
In the last eight months. We also do have another facility open in Malindi, in the coast region.
Okay.
We have about 145 patients on treatment already.
Okay.
And we continue to put many more patients on treatment. The other centers that we're going to open very soon by December include the Coast General Hospital now in Mombasa. There's a facility in Kisauni, still in Mombasa. We'll open a site in Kwale. And we are also going to open another site within Nairobi before December, and we are working on the logistics.
Okay, so if someone has a problem, knows someone who has a problem, they can simply come to one of these centers and they will be assisted.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, so we have this program in place, but of course there are challenges. And you asked how do we ensure that
there is no
that it does not relapse.
Or create a new dependency.
Yes. Methadone, unlike heroin, does not create that scenario.
It's not an addictive drug.
It's not an addictive drug because it's medically proven to do that. And the recommendation now is that we treat you for life if you start. Of course, we can adjust the doses depending on how you're doing, and at some point we may actually cut it out altogether depending on how one is doing. But the way we program, we give to you for as long as possible.
So is it possible to be on this for the rest of your life?
It's possible to be on it for the rest of the life, depending on what dose you are taking before enrollment. There are people who are taking a lot of heroin. Khan will tell you. At one point, he injected himself with heroin enough to put 30 men to sleep, and he felt nothing.
Wow.
Yes, so it depends on how much someone is taking, and we taper it down with time, depending on how they do on the program.
All right.
The adherence is pretty good. We have over 90% of the people who started still continuing with treatment.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a pretty good number. Thank you very much for speaking to us this evening,
thank you,
gentlemen, about this new way to combat the effects of heroin addiction.
It's time to take a look at business. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Mumias Sugar Company has issued a profit warning for the full year ending June 2015 as the firm sank deeper into losses. The beleaguered sugar miller cited sugarcane shortages and closure of its factory for 2.5 months as some of the key reasons for its lackluster performance. The company has been facing cash flow challenges which forced the company to delay maintenance at its plant, forced the government to give it a 1 billion shillings bailout. The problems in Mumias have highlighted the inefficiencies blighting Kenyan sugar industry, which has seen sugar prices remain uncompetitive compared to peers in the Comesa region. According to Kenya Sugar Directorate statistics, it costs $500 to produce a ton of sugar in Kenya, against much higher than the $340 in Sudan, $250 in Egypt, $200 in Malawi, and $180 in Uganda. The analysts say the miller is intending to restructure operations, enhance factory efficiency, and streamline its marketing strategy, but insist the miller's inability to compete on price as well as mobilize adequate raw material remain key concerns. Now, Kenya is looking to start direct flights between Nairobi and Tokyo as it seeks to grow trade volumes between the two countries. The news comes as the country held the first ever Japan-Kenya Business Leaders Forum in Nairobi. KTN's Abiagina attended the forum, and this is more on that.
Kenya's push to lift the volume of trade in its key export markets is gaining momentum, with talks to scale up business taking on a front seat on the government's development agenda. The talks to initiate direct flights will cut down on travel time, as well as open up Kenya as a tourist circuit for Japanese tourists, even as Kenya works on revamping the slump that has hit the sector.
The introduction of direct flights will significantly boost trade, and it will also boost tourism.
During the forum, Kenya showcased some of its mega infrastructure projects that it is seeking investors to pump in funds. Among them include the Lamu-South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport Corridor, LAPSET, as well as the energy sector.
Today our economic fundamentals are strong, the outlook is positive, and the market has become friendlier and more profitable.
According to Japanese ambassador to Kenya, the private sector is angling to invest in sectors where immediate deals can be made, namely in infrastructure and renewable energy. The Kenya Investment Authority indicated at the forum that the government will be keen on luring investors to the LAPSET project as well as the Konza Technopolis project. The LAPSET project has been billed as a game changer not only for Kenya but the region at large. The project cost is estimated at 2.4 trillion shillings, almost equivalent to the country's national budget. Japan is currently undertaking the expansion and modernization of the port of Mombasa. Kenya is targeting to enhance cargo throughput at the port, which has been rocked with efficiency hurdles. The trade balance is currently tilted in favor of Japan, which exports cars and electronics into Kenya, but only imports horticulture, basic agricultural produce and minerals.
Trade between Kenya and Japan has been on the increase. It has grown steadily from 229 million in 2000 to 1.5 billion in 2014. It's actually a very big jump, although it's still a drop in the ocean.
Leaders from the two countries say they are working to create more linkages to pave way for more export going forward. Abiagina, KTN Business.
Thanks, Abi. Kenya's leather sector contributes about 10 billion shillings to the gross domestic product, even though its potential is estimated to be at least 10 times more. The industry has in recent decades been faced with unfavorable policies and declining quality of hide and skin, but the government finally seems to be working towards reviving it. One of the recent developments is creation of leather clusters in various parts of the country, which are centers for value addition and marketing of finished leather units. KTN's Charles Gitonga visited the Kariokor cluster here in Nairobi City and brings us that story on this week's edition of The Adventurer.
Now, in the early 90s, Kariokor market was known for nyama choma or roast meat, but 2 decades later, over 90% of the businesses that are here have to do with leather. And this week on The Adventurer, would like to look at the significance of this market in Kenya's leather sector by speaking to various traders on how they started their businesses and the kind of challenges that they are facing.
My name is Kabiro Donga. This is Kariokor market, and Kariokor market, over 90% of the business that is done here is leather. In the old days there was nyama choma, there was all that, but now it has been overtaken by the leather industry. Over 80% of the leather that is produced locally is consumed here. They make belts, shoes, and other items actually.
Majina yangu naitwa Jane Kiriga. I have been Kariokor kwa miaka kama 5 to 7 years. Nikitengeneza tu mambo ya leather. Inakuwa sometimes ngumu kupata capital. Sio rahisi hivyo kuwa na capital kubwa umeki products zikae nyingi, wateja wakija wakute vitu ziko tayari, inakuwa bit ngumu. Sometimes nataka kupata loans, inakuwa ngumu. Lakini tunashukuru maybe serikali watakuja kutusaidia one day one time. Sababu tumekuwa kwa some meetings with the government na trainings wakituuliza venye tunataka kusaidika.
Now, every year, about 2 million sandals are made here in Kariokor, and 2 million pairs of shoes, and 4 million belts. And all of this is handcrafted in absence of machinery. Niambie, unatengenezanga viatu ngapi kwa siku?
Kwa siku tunaweza tengeneza viatu kama 50 pairs. Au ni tuseme kila fundi anaweza shona kitu 25 pairs to 30 pairs. So toto inaweza kuja 50 to 60 pairs. Tuseme pair kama moja, tuseme pair kama hii, kiatu kama hii. Kiatu kama hiyo unaweza cost ya hii kiatu tuseme ni kitu 700 hivi. Cost yake za material yote sasa. Labda kuuza tunaweza uza 850 ama 900. Hiyo ni wholesale. Hiyo sasa ni mwenye anachukua mingi sasa ya kwenda kuuza huko nje.
The challenges that we are facing is the marketing of our products. That's the biggest challenge that we are having. Our products are competing with plastic from China, plastic from other countries. And not everybody is aware that those shoes are plastic. And then there is the second-hand shoes. As much as the government is saying that it is giving a penalty on importations of second-hand shoes, what we find in the market is completely different.
Challenges sana hapa, kitu ya kwanza ni space. Space hiyo ndio tumekosa kabisa. Unaweza kuta kama hii stall moja imebeba zaidi ya watu 10. Na angalia ni kitu kama 10 by 10. So space peke yake hiyo tumekosa, alafu na ingine ni marketing. So because kazi yetu tunaona kama ni seasonal, in case kama tunaweza kutafuta kitu yenye na prolong sales yake inaendelea kwa muda mrefu. Example, saizi unaona kama competitor wetu kama sana ni Ethiopians. Sasa Ethiopians zao unakuta kama wako na direct link na government. Na government yao ndio inawasaidia kuuza viatu zao, kumarket viatu zao. So wanapatiwa material. Wakishapatiwa material, hiyo material tena ndio wanatafutiwa soko mahali watauza. Of which unakuta kama soko yenye tungekuwa tunauzia kama Kamkunji, unakuta kama vitu za Ethiopians zote ndio ziko huko.
And now after all this, it's time to buy a pair of shoes. There we go. Pure leather pair of shoes at 1,000 shillings, made in Kenya, Kariokor market. Charles Gitonga for the adventure.
For KTN Business, for more news, log on to our website, ktnnews.com. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Up next is KTN Sports with Moses Wahisi. For now, have a good night.
Good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Let's start on a soccer note where KPL defending champions Gor Mahia have secured 1 point after being held to 1-1 draw by Nakuru All Stars in a closely contested match at the Nyayo National Stadium. Kogalo went ahead through Joshua Toyugi, who put the ball into his own net after a miscommunication between him and his own goalkeeper. The match seemed balanced with both sides creating chances, but All Stars equalized deep into the second half with Lamba Bebeto scoring. With the result, Gor Mahia are still at the helm of the table with 56 points, and that is 41 points ahead of All Stars, who are still hovering at the bottom of the log.
Looking at the teams that are on top of us, they are not moving, they are still stagnating. So we just work hard, each game at a time. We have collected a point here to the champions. It was a win for us, but we'll appreciate for that 1 point.
I think we had some chances. I think we need to have a little bit more composure. But once again, given it was a team that hadn't played together before, then very pleased. And, you know, I think you've got to give respect to other teams. You know, there's people saying that we should just win games. That's very disrespectful to the other teams in the league and very disrespectful to Nakuru All-Stars that are fighting to stay in the league.
And Gor Mahia's unbeaten runs continues there. Kenyan schools continue with their dominance in this year's edition of the East Africa Secondary School Games in Rwanda. And despite that fact, the athletics team, which starts their campaign tomorrow, has promised to defend their title as a Shimba Hills and also Upper Hill School, cruise to victory in basketball. Robinson Okenya now reports from Rwanda.
It was an all-Kenyan affair as the secondary school games got into day 4 in Huye, Rwanda. In girls hockey, defending champions Sinyolo were given a reality check as their Kenyan opponents Kerugoya girls shoved them aside with a 1-0 win. Esther Kerubo sounded the boards for Kerugoya. Sinyolo, who have won the title on back-to-back basis, have to win their next match to keep alive their hopes of bagging their 3rd successive title.
You're taking a lot of time, Aziz!
In boys hockey, it was a repeat of the Kenya National Finals as Narok faced St. Anthony. The runners-up St. Anthony, however, had the last laugh with a 2-1 win. Lawrence Okongo and Benson Mushina made the all-important scores for St. Anthony.
We are at 9 points, and we have 2 matches to go. Probably if we win the next 2 matches, we have gold. And my team is set. We came here to get maximum points, unbeaten, and we are on course.
In basketball, defending champion Shimba Hills continued with the impressive results as they emerged winners over Nabisuna from Uganda in a match that saw the defending champions work extra hard for maximum points. In the boys' ties, defending champions Upper Hill survived by a whisker to emerge 56-54 winners over APE Rugunga from Rwanda. Upper Hill had to wait until the last quarter to win after making a total of 22 points to their opponent's 6. Elsewhere, Kenya kicks off our title defense in athletics tomorrow. Kenya won almost all the long and short distance races in last year's championships in Tanzania, and this year they're seeking to continue with their dominance.
Na mwaka huu tunataka kuchukua 15 kwa vile tunakimbia races 15.
Despite Margaret Nyerere missing out from the championship, the Kenyan teams are fit for the challenge. The land of 1,000 hills provided a perfect opportunity for Kenyan teams to flourish today. But tomorrow comes the most anticipated day to see how Kenyan teams start their title defense in athletics. Robinson Okenya, KTN Sports in Huye, Rwanda.
Let's hope that the Kenyan teams are going to continue to sparkle in Rwanda. 22-year-old Joseph Njeru from Embu County has scooped a rare first, and that's after beating all odds to enlighten and also sign for the prestigious, States International Basketball Association, and that's Philadelphia 76ers. Towering at 6.6 feet, the youngster is proceeding to the prestigious 76ers to demonstrate to the world that Kenya has what it takes to compete in basketball, and that is internationally.
Since I joined Form 1, that was in 2009, 2010, basketball has been the first priority to me, starting from Form 1 as my teacher said and my coach. Yeah, I moved on with basketball and school from the lowest level, let me say the district level, to the national level, up to the East Africa level, where I've been performing very well. And after high school, which is last year, I joined a team from Coast Region called KPA, actually the champions of the Kenya League now, and I've been doing well to this position, to this point, and I'm very happy about it. I'm going to explore and my dream will come true. That's what I believe. Every basketballer will wish to play in NBA. Me too, I hope and wish to play in NBA, but it's not easy, let me just say it.
The Kennedy Obuya Rolling Mabati Cricket Tournament entered its 9th edition with 16 teams taking part in the 3-day event. In a different front, 17-year-old Kenyan driver Hirani Tejas is expected to participate in the last 3 rounds of the RX Lights Championships, including Spain, Turkey and also Italy.
Kenyan driver Tejas Hirani participated in test days which were organized by First Corner in Istanbul at the end of last year. He'll be the first Kenyan and yet the first African driver in the World Rallycross Arena this year. With some serious experience he has in his hands at rally raid in stage rallies as well as Formula BMW rookie program at the circuit racing with single-seaters, Tejas Hiran will be one of the potential future rallycross stars. He has already declared his intentions to rule the rally scene.
It's a relief. It's been one of my biggest goals to show the potential of my home country and the potential I have out there.
Elsewhere, Kennedy Obuya launched the 9th edition of the Obuya Rolling Mabati Cricket Tournament that has attracted a total of 16 teams. Machakos will be represented by one team while the rest will be from Nairobi County. The 3-day event that kicked off on Wednesday will be played on 3 grounds: Simba Union, Jeffrey Academy and Premium School.
There will be 4 categories. There will be under 11, which has 4 teams, under 13 has 4 teams, under 15 has 4 teams, and under 19 has also 4 teams.
The final is slated for the 22nd of this month. Hassan Juma, KTN Sports.
And that's it for today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Have a lovely night.
As we wrap up this bulletin, let's go back to our big Q. This evening we asked you whether you think President Uhuru Kenyatta's case at the ICC should be revived. Thank you for sharing your feedback with us this evening. There's Judith Odiambo. You say no, that would be a waste of public resources. This case is going nowhere, much as several lives were affected. On the other side of the coin, Prince Gig says over 1,300 lives were lost. Let the case go on. One here from Jeffrey Otieno. You say the case should be revived. All is not okay. Leaders still spread ethnic hatred and things could worsen. Finally, one here from Samuel Odoyo. You say whoever is responsible for the post-election violence should be brought to book regardless of their status. Well, thank you very much for participating in our poll tonight and for watching KTN Prime. That's about it for now. William Silla was our sign language interpreter and I'm Nancy Kachingira. Thank you very much for having joined us, and that's it from KTN Prime.